All right, welcome back to, I guess this is a series that we haven't done a video in about a month or so, but we definitely want to do a couple more of these throughout the summer. We are going to review our lineups in the PGA Eagle. This is a 3-entry max tournament, and pretty much me, Colin, and Pete are entering 3 lineups in here. This is a $5 entry, has almost 12,000 entries, and again, it's 3 max. First place is 2,000, but it's definitely interesting looking at ownership because there's only 3 entries allowed. So we're going to go through our lineups here just quickly and sort of just talk through our thought processes and probably make fun of each other a little bit. So that'll be good. So I'll start with mine. These are my 3. I unfortunately didn't cash any of them because they're just garbage lineups. So one thing that really stood out to me was that if you went DJ at his really high cost, he was at 12.5. You really just had to nail your low guys, and that was proved to be a hard thing. I took JT Poston and JJ Spawn here, who didn't do so well in this lineup here. Graham Dillette and Hagee really let me down. And then this was the lineup that I tried to get off of DJ. Lahiri was the guy that I had to take a chance on, and then Jordan Spieth was my pivot, and he ended up missing the cut, which was pretty disastrous. But yeah, I mean, the issue is that when a guy is 12.5, you have to go 3 or 4 guys that are in the low 7K range, and the data just suggests that those guys have a very very low percent chance of making the cut. And that's the problem, is that if you have to go 3 or 4 of those guys, the odds of them all making the cut and getting 6 through is just really low. Colin, yeah, give me some crap here on my lineups.
So I think like the guys that like I think were some of the clearest fades to me this week. I mean, there are like 5 or 6 across the board in a high range. I thought Finau, Duffner, and Henley were all clear fades just because the ownership was going to be really high. 2 and 3 of them did pretty decently well, but like I just don't think that like anybody like below 10K over 20% ownership range, over 20% projected ownership is ever a good play. I just think you need too low ownership. Kind of similarly in the lower range, I think my 3 fades hands down were Sung-Hoon Kang, Bud Cauley, and Ali Schneider-Chans, who were just touted so much. I had them definitely cracking 15% ownership. The corollary to that is I also don't think anybody under 8K, over 15% ownership is ever a good play. Maybe that's kind of reductive, but like maybe, never say never. But I really am struggling to think of a case where that would be true. I'm also kind of biased because I think I'm bearish on Cauley relative to the rest of the world. We talked a little bit about that in this week's Seen It DeLuca preview, but I just thought he was the #1 guy that's going to be so heavily owned. I get it that he did top 5 and it's a fine finish. People are going to continue to be on him, but just no, I'm never going to be on someone that with that low price tag with that high ownership. So I hate that play, but I don't know if I'm in the minority here. Pete, am I being too harsh here? Like, what do you think of like the ownership value nexus for like those sub 8 guys?
Yeah, well, I played all the chalk this week and got waxed with it. So yeah, I need to get better with the golf lower ownership stuff. I feel like I do a pretty good job with 150 lineups. I still need to figure out how to do a better job with like 3 lineups or 1 lineup and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm struggling. I normally find a couple guys. I do think you have to mix in the best plays. I'm still not convinced it's just, fade all the really chalky plays. If you have leverage somewhere else, I certainly think it makes sense. So, I do get what you're saying. I think it makes a lot more sense in this Eagle with 3 lineups to fade some of these clear chalk guys. But, yeah, I had Henley on all 3 lineups, so I'm not the guy to ask this week.
Yeah, I mean, like this line in particular, this is my worst one here. As you can see, 348, 2 guys missed the cut. But I don't think this was like a horrible lineup. I did have some chalk, but Spieth, was my pivot away from DJ. But again, the problem is that in a field where like you have to take a lot of guys in the low 7K, high 6K range. It's not even like Lahiri was high owned or some of these other guys were high owned, but they just have a very low chance of making the cut. So if those guys don't make the cut, then you're in trouble for sure. So something that I'm not exactly sure what I would change from this lineup, but yeah, maybe I should have, when I saw how hard it was going to be and how many top guys, maybe I should have faded DJ a little bit more.
I don't know. Like I was heavy in DJ this week. I think it's just like the only thing you can do to differentiate is just take some lower owned like 7 flyers. And it's like, yes, it's hard because you have to take a lot of risk, but it's also really hard to win a GPP. So it's just like the level of risk that you have to assume in the first place is just so high that just like embrace the nihilism. Like you have to take a bunch of flyers.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, let's move on to Pete's lineup.
Okay, so all 3 of my teams are terrible. I basically had the same team just with like 1 or 2 guys rotated out. Not to make excuses, but I made these extremely quick based off a cash game team. But best team was Byung-Hun An, Russell Henley, who I had in all 3, Ryan Palmer, Spieth, Swafford, and Woodland. Spieth was a swap off. I think this is like a 2 versus 2 versus the main lineup I ran. This is another one where I went Sergio. It's very similar. I went with Finau and Sergio, but a lot of the same guys. I think I had Swafford and Henley in all 3. And then this, I believe, was my cash game team, or similar to my cash game team with DJ. Again, I went Henley, I had Keegan, Swafford across the board, Ryan Moore, and I subbed in Vegas in this one. So this lineup, actually, in terms of ownership, I have 2 guys that were pretty nice, Vegas and Swafford. I don't mind the Swafford call either, but clearly going Henley at 27% was a mistake, just given his ownership, not based on the result. But yeah, pretty poor lineups across the board. And no great ownership stuff outside of Swafford, who I did think was a pretty good play.
Yeah, I thought Swafford was one of my favorite plays of the week, especially like along that value ownership. He was actually lower owned than I thought it would be. I think Henley is, if I'm being overly, taskmaster and harsh, like the one unforgivable play across all the lineups. I definitely had him north of 20% ownership. I don't think there's any amount of equity that he brought to the table that justifies like 20%. The only guy that justifies who cares about his ownership this week was DJ, who I didn't mind having a lot of, even though it's heavy chalk. But I don't think Henley's a good play. In cash game, yeah, but like GPP is just way too high owned.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that even if in all 3 of my lineups, I faded Henley and I still didn't cash any of mine. Like, again, like if you take a low price guy, those guys just don't have great odds of making a cut. And we saw Hudson Swafford with that first round 81. And like these guys are just risky. Like especially in a 3-inch max, it's hard to get 6 of 6 through. Sort of no matter what 6 guys you choose. So yeah, I mean it's tough. Fade Henley, not fade Henley. It was tough to get 6 guys through the cut this week.
Yeah, I agree, but that's like I think the kind of flip side of that is when it's tough for the masses to get 6 out of 6 through. Like if you just zag where everybody's zinging, your payoff is even higher because like when no one else can get 6 out of 6 through, if you're doing something different, the odds that you have gotten 6 out of 6 through are even higher, and that's when you start to get the range and just like start to access the mega payouts and like the top 25 of the BGPPs.
Right, no, for sure. I think that's fair. Let's see the GOAT lineups here.
All right, where am I at? So, how did I do this week? So, it was 1 bad one, an okay one, and 1 great one. So, I'll start with the one at the bottom here. I was so exposed to DJ across the board that I just wanted 1 non-DJ lineup. I mean, there is Jason Day. I think Jason, like Day and Spieth to me were functionally equivalent to like a DJ and like a Byung-Hun An or a Gary Woodland pairing, as you'll see in the next lineup. Other guys across the board here. Swafford was actually one of my favorite plays of the week. Really disappointing first round, but I have exactly 0 regrets considering how well he set up. Brad Keegan was one of those where, I was willing to take more on him because, there was some rain in the area, so I knew greens would be a little bit softer, so I didn't mind his bad putting. And then we had some kind of flyers over here. Graham Dillette is the one kind of, I think maybe the biggest mistake here. Originally, this was JT Poston, but I had a feeling he'd be higher owned than projected, so I wanted to get off of him. And it was basically a decision between Dillette and Vegas. I talked myself in again to making course history seem higher and more important than it was, even it was already priced into my process. This is a league of mine. that I just need to just like stop focusing in on course history. It's almost like looking at like illusory variance and it's not predictive at all. Michael Kim is kind of like my second potential mistake of the week. And I go back and forth on this because he was in a bunch of my lineups. And Michael Kim, we've always talked about, is one of those guys where like always rates really well, but just has like no upside whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at upside before, and the first time I took a look at it, it wasn't all that predictive of future results. But if there's one guy that just like, on the one hand, like he did fine, he did okay with that 71 in there, and definitely had low ownership. But I really need to revisit, is he a good GPP player or not? The one reason that I am still okay with him this week is because he was a local. So if there's kind of one thing that's not priced into it, I'm willing to take a flyer. So other guys and the rest of the lineups, here's kind of like some more kind of standard variations on like the guys I was high on. There are basically 4 flyers that I was high on this week. Jason Kokrak, Jamie Lovemark, Michael Kim, and James Hahn. And I was incredibly lucky that all 4 of those guys basically justified and like not only had low ownership, but like did really well. This one kind of almost had a chance of like cashing really well. It was really just, I think, Swafford and Gillette that ruined it. But, definitely happy with Lovemark. We talked about him on the pod. He's high risk, high reward. I don't mind embracing risk for GPP. And Kokrak just had one of those monster rounds this week. I was really happy with the leverage I got at that ownership there.
So Kokrak was the guy that you even in your other lineups this week, talking outside the Eagle, like the up and down, you had Kokrak. He was like 0.5% owned in all tournaments, and you had several lineups in each tournament with him. What led you to Kokrak?
It was a course fit thing. I thought it set up well for bombers. And I thought he had enough of a chance where he rated well. So it's almost Kokrak is one of those guys where like he cleared the minimum level of equity, and from there his projected ownership just made him super attractive because I knew that absolutely no one else would be on him, and the amount of leverage I would have gotten from him was just absolutely insane. And like when you have a top 5 finish that no one else is on, especially when everyone else is on Collie type and like Sung Hoon Kang, just the leverage that you get when you're right and everyone else is wrong is just so enormous that it propels you to the top.
So how much leverage do you how do you decide how much leverage you want? Because like not only did you like say, okay, Kokrak's going to be less than 1%, I want to be heavier on him. Like you weren't just like heavier on him like you had him in 3% of your lineup. You had him in like 20% of your lineups, right?
Yeah, and that gets into a question of one of our subscribers asked me like, how do you decide how many when you have your core of player, like when you have your pool of players, like how much do you diversify your player pool? Mm-hmm. I basically don't. And because like let's do the math on this one, right? So I had basically maybe 9 guys I was interested in for my core. It started with DJ because there's way too much equity. From there, the second guy is a split between Woodland and On, so that's 2. The 3 fillers is basically out of 4 guys: Kim, Lovemark, Kokrak, and Hahn. And then the last one was like Swafford and Bradley. So that's like maybe 9 players that you can make essentially 16 potential lineups out of. So like we've talked about, I don't feel the need to diversify for the sake of just like diversification, right? Your worldview is your worldview. So you can basically just like, if that's your conviction, you just go all in a small group of players. So that's kind of a risk-taking philosophy of mine. Pete, I don't know how much you diversify for the sake of diversity, but I just don't see a need to when your worldview is your worldview.
Right, especially with 3 lineups. I think you should just go all in. That's what I try to do, And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a flaw that people make in general with GPPs is they try to cover too many bases, and you're never going to be a profitable player if you're trying to cover everything. So you have to take a stance, and you have to go in big with your core. So I think you made a really good choice there, and congrats on the big lineup, especially with Kokrak. That clearly was the big play this week.
Yeah, and as long as we might as well get into show. So like this one is the best one by far, top 9, the 9th in the whole field, and this really shows you the power of leverage because like when you have Kokrak and Hahn, who all I was happy really with them is like they were below 2% ownership. And so when you have 2 top 5 finishes with such low ownership, the rest almost doesn't matter because you're so far ahead of the field to begin with that all you need to do is nail some decent equity. And that's basically what everyone else is here, where it's kind of decent showings. But that's really what it takes. And I think that, or at least I think, is the easiest path to vaunting the rest of the field. Just do something that no one else is doing that has a good enough chance of getting there, and the rest will take care of itself. So it's basically me getting as much leverage as I can while maintaining a base level of tournament equity.
Yeah. So last question I have for you, Colin, is how much leverage is too much leverage? Because you have getting a guy that's 0.6% owned is nice, and obviously if you have him, your lineup is quite unique. I mean, there's only 0.6% of lineups that would have, but even potentially that lineup, let alone probably the lineups are not going to have the exact combination you have. 3 guys under 2%. Where's the limit for you? Maybe you just like those guys independently of their ownership.
DJ is the only one that I really liked independent of the ownership. I think I actually had. That was just it was a weird week because on any other course I probably would have been way heavier on Jason Day. It's kind of like a pseudo contrarian play, no, he just had way too much between fit and history here.
I guess my question is if you're rostering Kokrak, you're going to have a unique lineup in the Eagle. So why roster Hahn and Lovemark as well?
It's not just I think one of the things that people get caught on with ownership is don't have any duplicates, and that's the only reason you have low ownership. No, I think it's just ownership in aggregate. It's just it's not just a duplicate thing. It's just you want low ownership across the board because when you hit on 2 of them in low ownership, just your leverage is compounded. So I really do think it is just an additive ownership of the whole lineup type of thing will put you in better position.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep, agree with that.
Disagree?
No, I agree.
Oh, okay. I thought you said disagree with that. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, so more so than duplicate, just sort of add up and average your ownership in that.
Yeah, start thinking beyond duplicates and just low ownership is just good across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, cool thing is our when you build lineups in our player models, it averages projected ownership for you. So you could see literally that what you're talking about, Colin, is the aggregate projected ownership for your lineup, and see, okay, this is the lineup that is going to have the lowest average ownership. It could be a really nice leverage one in tournament. So cool. Any last thoughts, Colin?
No, I'm just excited to really kind of play around with I think the one thing that I want to revisit this week is just trying to get a better metric for calculating upside. The one thing that it's really results oriented, but I had Billy Horschel really close to Michael Kim in terms of average outcome. If there's, and I'm going to revisit and say is there any kind of additional metric or information or concept that I could have incorporated to maybe get Horschel into lineups over Kim? I'm not going to sweat it too much because it was a pretty good payoff this week with those contrarian plays really hitting across the board, but never done improving, never looking for opportunities to get better. I really want to see if I can get upside the metric it deserves to kind of make some better decisions.
Yeah, fair enough. What was the payout for 9?
What was 9? That was a $300 payout.
All right, Pete, we got some catching up to do, buddy.
We're in a big hole, buddy, but we'll take something down here soon, hopefully.
I am liking my lead so far.
Sounds good. All right, thank you guys for watching. We're definitely going to continue to do this throughout the summer. I hope it was useful to you guys. Definitely feel free to send us any feedback, but definitely enjoy just reviewing the process. We talk about these players. It's definitely always good to look back and review the process of actually building lineups. So thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you guys next time.